Today I decided to go ahead and begin basically read chapter 8 at this time because some stuff came up that I needed to do at 2 o'clock. And I really wanted to, I felt an urgency to get the rest of this book uploaded so that you can listen to it at your convenience or watch it at your convenience. And with the YouTube platform that I'm using, um, it's free. I I This message means more to get this out than to me making money off of it. And I hope that you've enjoyed so far. Wake up to the alchemy of your heart. And without further ado, I will begin with chapter 8. Chapter 8, Wake Up to the Alchemy of Your Heart. Finally, real-eyezing and in-tegration. When I arrived back home, I was finally able to release that past life and make sense out of everything. I went through in the past 3 months. This is why I call this chapter Finally Real-Eyezing, which means seeing everything through different eyes, or actually seeing it from a soul level. And then integration, which means bringing together all of the parts into a whole. My life moved very quickly because I had to have all of those bottom teeth removed, 11 to be exact, and that became my priority during the following weeks. The day finally arrived when my teeth were going to be extracted, and the way the schedule worked was that I needed to be at the clinic for a morning appointment so they could take impressions of my bottom teeth and make a temporary denture. After my morning appointment, I went over to my dear friend's place for my last solid food lunch. My wonderful friends treated me to the bestest ever mushroom burger from 5280. My dear friend drove me back to the dental office for, I think it was my 1 p.m. extraction. It took 14 shots of Novocaine in 4 quadrants of my mouth for it to be deadened enough for the teeth to be extracted. I think I left the office around 5 p.m. or so. I didn't remember exactly because my dear friend said that my face was bloody and I was walking sideways. Before the surgery, my dentist asked what pain meds worked on me. I hadn't taken pain meds in years, so I said Percodan. Well, they stopped making Percodan, which we soon found out when my dear friend's husband drove me home, and we stopped to get me some pain meds. The Novocaine was wearing off, and I had blood-soaked gauze in my mouth. All I wanted to do was to just be knocked out and go to sleep. As I said earlier, I had a weak liver, so I had to be careful about what pain meds I took. Meanwhile, my dear friend called the office and through some persuasion was able to get the doctor who extracted my teeth to come to our home and escort my wife to the pharmacy to get a prescription that I could take. While my doctor was on her way, her dear husband was helping me through our apartment door and helped my wife get me in the bed. I have to say that was the worst pain I think I have ever experienced. I couldn't even lay my head on the pillow because it felt like the pillow was coming through my head. I cried and texted my dear friend Abby, and she called me immediately, and all I could do was groan a bit. She sent me loving Reiki and had our friend send it too. And then she led me in a guided meditation and I finally fell off to sleep. I woke up around an hour later and April had returned back from the pharmacy with tramadol. It was the only pain med that wasn't processed through the liver, yet it was a very mild pain reliever. Abby sent me some binaural beat links and talked me through the pain. All the while, I just wanted to leave the planet and leave the pain behind. I don't remember much of that week except for all of my food went through the Vitamix. I was on amoxicillin for the infection, but soon found out it wasn't working very well. I was guided by my friend to ask for a stronger antibiotic because I wasn't getting any better. As a matter of fact, I was getting worse. I didn't leave my bed except to use the bathroom, which I needed assistance to get to. The dentist gave me a much stronger antibiotic. I think it was Augmentin. The pills were horse pills and expensive to boot. But they did the trick, and I took them with a probiotic drink. At last, my little gums began to heal. Abby talked with me daily and sent Reiki, as did my dear friend Tony. It was a hard February for me as my gums healed and I could only have pureed foods, not to mention the migraines I was having and TMJ now set into my jaw. Shortly thereafter, I was drawn back to New Orleans once again. I finally got healthy again, and my friend Fages was having her second surgery. I wasn't able to go back to New Orleans at that time, and she was having it, but I arrived a week later. My bite on my denture was way off, and in doing so, it made it impossible to chew food. I had made arrangements to have a new temporary denture made with my new dentist, and it happened to fall on the Monday before I left on the plane headed to New Orleans. There was a mix-up in communication with the dentist office, and as fate would have it, I had to go to New Orleans without any bottom teeth. I stayed for 9 days helping out every day that I could. Fagé spent a lot of time in bed while I was there just recovering. We did go out a few times so she could get out of the house. When we did leave the house, it was to get something to eat. Fagé was a foodie as well, and she would recommend to me food that I could eat with no teeth. The food was soft enough that I could actually enjoy. One place had a green goat quesadilla. I remember how yummy that tasted because pretty much up until then, my food was pulverized, mixing all of the flavors together. This quesadilla that Fagé mentioned had artichoke, spinach, goat cheese, and roasted garlic, all on a soft flour tortilla. I actually could gum this bunch of deliciousness. We did a little with energy work while I was there. I ended up having a severe migraine and spent one whole day in bed. I remember laying there in so much pain, thinking about just getting up to get a cold washcloth to put on my head and cover my eyes with. I heard a noise next to me and looked over, and there was dear Fagé standing there with a cold washcloth for me. I later learned that day that when I was down with the horrible migraine, we were having some major solar, or as Lisa Brown calls them, solar, SOULAR, flares. It seemed like those 9 days flew by, and before I knew it, I was headed back home again. Before I go on with my story, I am very happy to announce that at the time of this writing of this story, my dear friend Fagé is still writing her own story. And I know I am excited to see how it all turns out. I had an appointment scheduled the next day to pick up my temporary denture. This office is so busy, you really don't want to miss your appointment. The plan was to have my bottom teeth extracted. Then, after a time of healing, I could have 4 titanium implants screwed into my jawbone that I could attach my permanent denture to. This was going to be a costly procedure, but my highest self-expression of myself had pretty much taken care of that. So, to tell that story, I am going to take you back to an event I attended called rising out of the darkness. Looking back now and seeing all of the pieces put together, I just swell up and overflow with so much gratitude. Tears well up in my eyes. I feel so much love, joy, peace within me every time I think of these beautiful souls that entered my life at this time. It happened during the month of November of 2017. Now, November is the 11th month. 11. And 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 7 equals 10. And 1 plus 0 equals 1. So putting those numbers together is 1, 1, 1, which in my perspective is once again new beginnings. This was, in my experience, very true. I had my plane ticket and my event ticket in my hand as I packed to go to Rising Through the Darkness, hosted by the Leo King, astrologer David Lawrence Palmer. I almost didn't go because my daughter Sky came down with the flu that week. I did pretty much everything I could do for her, and her immune system was taking care of the rest. It also took great courage for me to get my ticket anyway because I didn't like going any place alone. It was a fear that lived inside of me. In the past, whenever I went anywhere, with the exception of when I was in the Navy, I always had my wife or a friend who accompanied me on my trips. After I stepped into my own power, everything came into perfect alignment for me to go. As I packed, the still small voice inside of me suggested that I take my tarot cards. So I threw them in my bag along with my clothes and my notebook. Then it was off to DIA. I boarded the plane only knowing that my intention was to give David a hug and thank him for helping my daughter and me to have a greater awakening, which started with us listening to his astrology report, which then brought us to watching his YouTube documentary called The Age of Deception. My plane landed in Los Angeles, and I boarded the hotel limo that took me to the hotel, or as I call it, the portal that changed my life. It was a very hot day as the limo pulled up to the hotel entrance, and as I stepped out of the van, I saw a line that reached from the check-in counter almost to the door. I took a deep breath and found my place in line. I kept telling myself under my breath, this was going to be the bestest ever. As I stood in the line, one of the hotel employees walked around with bottled water to give to the guests. It looked like it would be several hours before I could check in and get to my room, and the event was starting in less than 2 hours. As I pondered that thought, the gentleman in front of me asked the wonderful soul who was attending to our need for water to quench our thirst by handing out bottles of water if this was the only line to check in with. The employee said, yes, sir, unless you signed up with our rewards program. I can't remember the exact name of that rewards program, but it rang a bell with me because I had signed up for it. He continued with, if you are a member, then the line for you is over there. He pointed to just beyond what looked like another part of the counter, but you couldn't see it because there was a ginormous staircase that blocked the whole view. I followed the gentleman in front of me to this newly known part of the counter, and lo and behold, there was just one person standing at the counter checking in. Next was the gentleman in front of me, and then it was my turn. The whole wait time was maybe 15 minutes. I received my key and headed to the elevator for the lift to my floor where my room was. I remember this elevator was like no other elevator I have ever seen before. You had to wave your key in front of the sensor, and the elevator took you directly to that floor. After I dropped my bags off and refreshed myself a bit, I headed to the banquet room where the event was taking place. As I walked in, I was informed there were different rows of seats available to sit in, but they were sectioned off for diamond, platinum, and then gold ticket holders. The diamond ones were the VIP passes, and they got to sit in the first few rows, followed by the platinum and then the gold. My ticket was gold. It was the least expensive ticket and didn't come with all of the perks. So I found a chair and sat down in, if memory serves me correctly, the fourth row. David did his introduction and then went right into what each astrological sign was getting ready to go through in the upcoming 2018 through 2020. I wrote down as much as I could as he revealed to us what each of our signs would encounter. He finally finished, and by then we were all famished. A bunch of us decided to go down to the restaurant in the hotel lobby and have a late dinner. I think it may have been around 9 p.m. I sat down at a table with several other beautiful women. We chatted a bit and ordered our food. While we waited for our food, I decided I had time to throw a few tarot cards for a good friend and client who texted me a question just before the event started. I pulled out my tarot cards and began to read them and text my client what I saw. Some of the other women saw me do this, and when I finished, they started to ask questions too. When our food was delivered, I found myself enjoying conversation with women named Abby Moneyhun, Kim McGee, Michelle Britton, and Heather LaBarrera, Holly Thorrington, Holly Jaros, Stacy Rich, Carrie Howell, Amy Parks, and Nikhil Criney, to name a few. Dinner was fantabulous. I had salmon on a bed of greens. After dinner was over, Kim invited me to her room along with Heather to continue our conversation. I ended up giving Kim and Heather a reading along with some soul counseling. I guess it was quite an impactful reading, and the tools I gave them to help them empower themselves meant so much, so they wanted to give me something in return. I just asked them both to please hold space because there were some things that I was going through. It was very late, and I hugged my new friends and headed to my room. I think I returned to my room around 3:33 a.m. the next morning. After a few hours of sleep, I was up and ready to attend day 2 of Rising Through the Darkness. The channeling I did the night before, combined with the coffee I was drinking, just revitalized me. David had just really barely scratched the surface the night before, and we all went down the rabbit hole the next day. Talk about taking the red pill. If you would like to see the event, you can go to the Leo King Events website and see the whole conference that David Lawrence Palmer hosted. Anyway, it was time to break for lunch. I was invited to join Kim along with several other of the diamond and platinum ticket holders in another restaurant downstairs. We all sat at a huge round table. It reminded me of the Knights of the Round Table, and we all had a good laugh. I decided I wanted something light for lunch. I let the beautiful souls who were sitting at the table know what really sounded good to me was some butternut squash soup. But it wasn't on the menu. The waiter came over to tell us the specials and told us the soup of the day. It wasn't butternut squash soup. However, the seasonal soup was butternut squash soup. You could have heard a pin drop as everyone at the table looked at me, and then we all broke out in laughter. The butternut squash soup was delicious. I think I may have had a salad with it. After lunch, we headed back to the banquet room to hear what David had to reveal during the second half of the day. I was able to give David a big hug and thank him. He gave us so much information during that day. To this day, I know that some of the information we received is still processing with me. We all got to experience a sound meditation before dinner. The meditation was interesting, to put it at best, and through our experience, my new friends and I grew closer. Dinner was another spectacular meal, and I sat with more interesting and exciting people. After dinner, David had his spiritual dance music, which I missed most of because during dinner, many people started asking me for readings. I spent most of that night, well, until very early into the next morning, giving readings to everyone who wanted them. Sunday was the wrap-up for the event, so David concluded his amazing presentation and then went into a time of channeling for people with individual questions. I walked over and stood in line because I wanted to know what my next step was. So I was behind a soul who just wanted so much to hear the answer that she wanted. Before she walked up to David to ask her question, she handed me her phone and asked me to record it for her. So I stood in line with her phone recording. While I was standing in line, David's public relations manager walked over to me. I knew her quite well because the night before, I gave her a reading that really helped her. She said, "Deb, are you platinum or diamond?" I looked at her and said, "You know I'm gold." She had a very sad look in her eyes as she forced out, "Then I am so sorry. I am going to have to ask you to sit down." I breathed in and thought to myself, if I hadn't spent so much on lawyers that did nothing for my daughter's divorce, I could have been a platinum or a diamond. The thought stayed with me for about 90 seconds, and then I heard a small, still voice say inside of me, "It's okay. It isn't the perfect timing for you to know yet." I stepped out of line and kneeled down to finish the recording of the woman in front of me. It was only a few more minutes before she and David had finished, and she came and got her phone from me. She looked so devastated and began to cry. Several of us walked up to her and hugged her. I offered to give her a reading, and she accepted. We both walked into the hallway and sat down. After I finished her reading, she left, and I went back into the banquet room. David was still answering questions and channeling the answers back for people. I spotted Kim and sat down next to her. I asked her, "Kim, can I tell you something?" She answered with, you don't have to ask my permission to tell me anything. What is it?" We walked to the door together where I said, "I have to tell you, when I was asked to sit down, I thought to myself, if I hadn't had to pay so much money for Sky's divorce for lawyers that did nothing, I could have asked David what my next step was." I continued, "I started to go into anger about it, but I caught myself, and instead I was able to give a soul counseling." Kim said, "I saw that, and I would like to do something for you. First of all, I want to pay for you to have a reading with David. It won't be this weekend, but it will probably be in December if that is all right with you." I was so dumbfounded by what she just said. I thought I was in a dream. "Also," she added, "I would like to help pay for your teeth." Tears started streaming down my face. I had never had anyone invest in me the generous amount of money that Kim just said she wanted to put into me. She believed in me, and now I had to see my self-worth. It was time for me to believe in me too. This trip was truly the bestest ever. After David finished his channeling, the event was pretty much officially over. The only thing left for us to do, for those of us who had tickets to do so, was to go to a very nice restaurant for another amazing meal, and then go out to the beach and have a bonfire with David while he showed us the planets from his perspective, firsthand. It was quite the night to remember, and now I had new friends from all over the country and even overseas. That weekend changed my life. I am in such gratitude to call the people I mentioned previously my new friends. Talk about new beginnings. So it looks like I have some time to go ahead and read to you chapter 9. Who knows? Maybe we may even finish today. Chapter 9. We all need those reminders, or thank you for the ass kicking. When I arrived home from New Orleans, my new temporary dentures were ready, so I drove to Thornton to pick them up. It had been a week and a half that I didn't have any bottom teeth in my mouth, and now these fit the bestest ever. I was so happy to have choppers in. My wife took me out for a steak. Even before, when I had broken teeth, it was very difficult for me to chew bites of steak. This steak, though, was the bestest ever, and my new teeth did their job perfectly. I was settling back into my routine at home when I felt another pull to go back to New Orleans. I called my friend Fage, and she informed me that they told her that now she had fluid around her heart and she wasn't doing very well. I knew that something was wrong before that call because I had a dream about my dear friend the night before. When she answered the phone to my call, she said, "So, are you calling to tell me you are on your way?" I talked with my wife, who was sitting next to me, and she pulled up plane tickets and purchased one for me. Then she went to the car rental sites and secured for me one as well. I told Fage what April had done. She was so excited to hear that I was on my way in just a few days. Fluid around the heart is usually what happens before one's diagnosed with cancer leaves their physical body. My goal this trip was just to go out and be support and have some fun with my friend. I could also write more in this book while I was there. She had a few medical appointments while I would be there, and she was scheduled for a stress test. This was scary for her because I think her uncle died when he had a stress test. The fear of mortality set in with dear Fage again. When my flight landed at Louis Armstrong International Airport, I picked up my bag from the carousel and headed out the doors and along the walkway to pick up my rental car. I got in touch with Fage to see if she needed me to stop for anything. I even suggested that I could stop into her favorite Italian ice cream place along the way and bring her a treat. She just wanted me to come straight to the house, so I reached into my memory banks and pulled out the directions I had stored in there. I arrived in the French Quarter at her home several hours after I landed because there was quite a line at the car rental, but I finally pulled up to the curb. Destination complete was the thought that went through my mind. My dear friend's color was paler than it was before I had left, and I could tell just from the color of her lips that she wasn't getting enough oxygen into her body. This friend of mine, she loved to keep on the go as much as she could. That fiery Sagittarius driving her way forward, even if her body was having a hard time keeping up. Last time I was there in March, one of her doctors had given her an inhaler, but when I saw her that time, which was now mid-April, it didn't look like it was helping her a whole lot. We did some energy work while I was there, but that wasn't the reason I was there this time. Again, I just wanted to have some fun with my friend because my heart asked me to do so. When my dear friend was sleeping and when the house was quiet, I would pick up my computer and type several paragraphs of what you are reading now. I even went to Jackson Square and sat along the Mississippi River bank and wrote a few chapters. On Friday, April 27th, I asked my friend if she was ready for me to leave as my heart told me my work was finished. Fage answered by telling me that I should be home for my mom for Mother's Day. So I booked a ticket to go back on May 4th, the following Friday. Late Sunday night, I started experiencing a mild headache on the left side of my face at my jawline. By Monday morning, the pain had increased so much that it brought tears to my eyes. Monday afternoon, I couldn't be in the light, and nausea had set in. My face would have that tingling feeling as if it was going to sleep, and then seem to wake up, over and over again with a vengeance. I laid in Fage's guest room, in bed, as tears flowed down my cheeks. I tried several methods of pain relief to include using my own herbal oil and cell salts, which normally worked very quickly. I wasn't keeping anything down at this time, but tiny sips of water. Fage was so worried about me. She kept replacing the ice packs that I kept over my eyes and head. I kept thinking that this was no ordinary migraine. Monday night, I slept on and off. Every time I woke up, I kept seeing something. Someone else in that room by my bed. It was a ghostly appearing figure and looked like an older woman. She didn't have a very happy look on her face. All I wanted to do, because it hurt so badly, was to just go to sleep. That night, every time I tried sipping water, it wouldn't stay down. Fage saw my struggles to try and make it to the bathroom, and she remembered that she had some sick bags. So I laid in bed using that sick bag when needed, with an ice pack over my head and eyes. Thank goodness for frozen black-eyed peas. The only thing I could do was lay in bed as still as I could possibly be. Tuesday morning brought on more of what I was experiencing on Monday with no pain relief. Not only that, I was growing more and more weak. Fage grew more and more concerned, and she had her dear friend wanted me to go and be seen by a doctor. I am not the one that really likes to go to doctors or emergency rooms or urgent care for that matter. I hoped that this migraine would subside today and I could get back to enjoying the last few days I had with my dear friend while I was in New Orleans. Well, Tuesday night came and it was only worse. Wednesday morning, I managed to call my health insurance to see what to do about out-of-area care. My wife and I were insured by Kaiser, and they didn't expand into the Louisiana area, so it looked like there would be an out-of-pocket cost. I conferred with my wife, and she told me to do whatever I was that I needed to do. Everything would work out. So I had Fage's dear friend take me to the emergency room. I was pretty dehydrated when we arrived, so after they checked me in, they started an IV, and I ended up getting stuck numerous times. I told the attending physician that I have a weak liver, so any kind of medicines that are processed through the liver could give me complications. I was in such pain lying on that hospital emergency room gurney. To make matters worse, they didn't have pillows. Plus, I was freezing and they didn't have blankets either. The only thing they had to cover me up was thin white sheets. I was asked what I normally take when I experience migraines. I explained that I don't get migraines very often. I didn't take Tylenol, Motrin, or anything like that. Whenever I become ill, which isn't too often, I use natural herbs and oils. Oh, my head hurt so badly. The nurse came in with a shot of Imitrex, and I think it was Phenergan, and put it into my IV. A few minutes later, the pain only grew worse. I don't know how long I was on that uncomfortable gurney in that emergency room before the attending physician came back in again. She questioned me about my weak liver. "Do you have hepatitis?" she asked. "No," I answered. "Do you have cirrhosis?" was her next question. "No," again I answered. "Then you don't have liver issues," she remarked as she left the room. A few minutes later, the nurse who had been assisting me came back into the room with a syringe. Before I could ask her what it was, she was injecting it into my IV. I managed to get out, "What is that?" "Dilaudid," was her answer. I said, "What?" as she pulled the needle out of my tubing and left the room. Just minutes later, I felt like I could only describe as an explosion beneath my right rib cage. It traveled around my right side and up my back into my shoulder. I gasped for breath because it felt like someone had just punched me in my chest and knocked the wind out of me. I sat straight up in bed and brought my knees to my chest. I am not sure what happened in the next second, but somehow I ended up on the cold floor, this time vomiting yellow bile. I yelled at Faget's dear friend, who was scrolling on her phone and hard of hearing, to go get the nurse and tell her I wanted to be discharged immediately. Faget's friend brought back the nurse, who muttered something to me about not being so dramatic and that I wasn't being discharged. They were taking me for a CT scan. I told her I want my discharge papers now, or I was walking out before they killed me. The nurse left, and just minutes later she had a paper in her hand for me. Faget's dear friend left to get the car, and I was left trying to stumble my way out of the hospital on my own. My right side was now in as much pain, or even worse, than my head. As I stumbled through the hallway, trying to keep my balance, moving slowly against the wall, one of the hospital administration personnel saw me and thought I was trying to go back into the emergency treatment area. I explained, "No, I just came from there, and now I am headed out the door to another hospital because you all just tried to kill me." She helped me to the chair that was just in front of the entrance. While I was sitting there, another person came out from admittance and told me that I was gray and that I needed to be seen. I told her I am going to the other hospital to be cared for because this hospital just made me worse than I was before I came in. My friend drove me to the other hospital in town, where they took me right into emergency. I guess my heart had slowed down so much that they became concerned. When they first took me in, they sat me in a reclining chair with an EKG unit hooked to me. Before I knew it, I was transferred to a room with a bed where they finally got me stabilized. My memory is pretty groggy because I was in and out of it. When I was out of it, I was at peace. The hospital ran tests and found that my ALT and AST were very high. They were, however, able to stabilize me, and I was able to go home at, I think it must have been close to 4 a.m. Thursday morning. Faget's dear friend stayed with me all day, so Faget sent her dear friend home, and Faget stayed with me until I was released. I fell into bed when I got back into their home and slept. When I awoke, it was early afternoon, and I had to get my suitcase packed. All I wanted to do was get home so my doctors could find out what was going on. Friday afternoon, Faget's dear friend took me to the airport. I checked in and headed to security. As I walked through the airport detector, the security guard stopped me. She said I had a bulge on my right side, so she was going to gently pat me down. She no more than touched my side, and I vomited. I told her that I was experiencing some pain and that I was going home to have some medical attention. She let me pass. It was a rough flight home with lots of turbulence, but I was happy to be back on the ground again. I was home. It was late when my wife picked me up, and we had planned on getting me to urgent care that next morning. As soon as urgent care opened, we were taken to a room. I was immediately given another IV. My arms were so black and blue from my past 2 hospital visits, and it took several more sticks to get my IV in again. Then the test began. Not only was I stuck so many times with IV, I went through several sticks to get my blood because it kept coagulating very quickly. My liver x-ray showed it was bigger than what other x-rays showed in the past. The doctors weren't sure what was going on with me. As I said earlier in these writings, my symptoms always fell outside the box. Urgent care got me stable enough, though, to go home. Sunday I woke up hungry and wanted something with some nutritional value. My wife and I ended up going to our favorite restaurant. I wanted some egg drop soup. A sweet soul who I call my friend waited on our table. She saw how sick I was and recommended an acupuncturist who was more than just an acupuncturist that could help me. She gave me her number and told me to call her. Monday morning, I woke up still not feeling very good. I called Eve Koserek of Om Acupuncture, located in Golden, and told her what I had been through, and she immediately made room on her schedule for me. My wife took me to her office, and I couldn't help but notice on her desk was a picture of a black octopus. Remember earlier when I told you that Bill was seemingly now guiding me? Eve had me lay down on her table in my weakened state. My color was pale, my side inflamed, my head hurt, and my liver was in distress. Eve couldn't directly work on me, so she used my dear wife as a surrogate. Through this amazing soul's intuitive guidance and being the healing vessel that she is, she just seems to have a knowing of what to do. The first thing she did was muscle test me to see what I was having a reaction to. She did this by having me hold a vial while my wife touched my shoulder and held her arm out. Eve would try and push her arm down. If her arm moved down, then it was something I was having an allergic reaction to. I held a vial of mold, and April couldn't resist Eve pushing her arm down. Eve then did a namabutyropods allergy elimination techniques, or NAET treatment. If you would like to know more, I recommend checking out this link, https://www.nlm.nih.gov/pmc/articles/PMC 2556666 3. In a nutshell, all of our allergies we endure are because our body was introduced to that substance when it wasn't ready for it. We may have experienced an illness from that introduction. Our body has a memory of this and stores it. Then we are exposed to that substance again. Our body goes into a fight or flight mode or shock symptoms. In other words, our body stores the energetic signature trail of the shock to our system. This develops a cycle of how it will respond if threatened again. Does that make sense? Mold, for me, was one of those threats. New Orleans is full of mold. When I look back at my other trips, I did indeed experience mild migraines while I was there. During that week when I first arrived home, I was so sick and my body was racked with so much pain that I reached out for help from my white rabbit friend, Abby. While I was talking to her on the phone, I was so weak. Quite honestly, it wasn't even me talking to her on the phone. I say this because it was like something else was using my voice. It was like I could see and hear what was going on, but I couldn't speak. It was another voice, a very small, weak, afraid voice, and not my highest self-expression of myself. This voice told her how much I hurt, how I was just tired of all the suffering on this planet, and that I too was tired of this suffering and pain. The voice continued with, I just want to leave this planet. Abby's voice became very powerful yet loving. I would like to ask you a question. To which I said, okay. Who am I talking to right now? Because this is not you, Deb. How long do you think it took for you to get this physical body that you're sitting inside right now? How long did you have to wait so that you could experience everything that your body is experiencing on this planet? I love you, Deb. Love is so strong. Maybe try this. Rewatch the end of the third Matrix. Remember at the end of the movie, there's a dark octopus thing like Bill, and it actually took Neo's body and enveloped it? Neo had to build up that light or love from the inside of his body and expand it through every cell of his body. And when he did that, the energy was not his own, was consumed and transmuted into pure radiant light. That's how we enjoy this experience on this planet. Transmute whatever has a hold of you into that pure light. I have to go now, but I will talk to you very soon. Those words echoed in my mind, and in doing so, it was like the chains that were holding me prisoner all of a sudden disappeared. I was really free. John 10:34 played in my head. Ye are gods. I called Abby a couple hours later and thanked her for kicking my ass. She laughed her beautiful, angelic-like laugh and said, you didn't win an Oscar for that performance. I laughed with her too, and then she said, welcome back. When I first came to Eve, my body was in such distress that Eve thought it would be a long time for her to just work directly on me without using April as a surrogate. On my fourth treatment, my body was able to receive treatment directly, and now I am happy to say that as my treatments with Eve Korsorek, DOMLACLCH at Om Acupuncture continue, my body is releasing all of those energetic signature trails, and every day I am becoming healthier by finally releasing all of those energetic signatures to everything that my body has a memory of. I know that without Abby, White Rabbit, reminding me of who I was and am, I would still be struggling with my body, trying to get better. I am so thankful and in loving gratitude for these two beautiful, powerful souls in my life. Here is Eve's philosophy: getting unstuck, a path for transformation, opening possibilities for personal growth and change. Eve Kocerek. So I still have some time left. So I am going to go ahead and read to you chapter 10. I've read this before on Facebook, but this chapter just brings everything into light. Chapter 10, treasure those quiet moments. And so, my dear friends, this book is about to end while my next one is soon to be written. I have shared with you just a few of the times in my life, in my story, that just may help you to make some kind of sense out of your life. I have also shared with you just a few of the dear souls who have shared this journey I have been on. I would encourage you to take a look at your own life now. Just take a moment and recognize the souls of the people that are playing their roles in the universe that you are creating. Take a pause and be in gratitude for the soulmates as well as the soulmates. Take a moment and replay those memories that are stuck in your mind that may be triggering you because of that energetic signature that is in your body's memory. If you have to, change that memory you experienced to have the outcome that you wished for. You know, the one that ended with a hug and I love you, instead of the one that ended with a hurt and the door slam. You, my dear friend, are the creator. Once you change the outcome of that memory or can be in gratitude for it, that is the very moment you step into your true power of the creator that you are and always have been. For the last chapter of my book, I want to leave you with empowerment. And I can think of no better way than to share with you the words of my dear friend, Abby Moneyhun. I received her permission to share these enlightening points with you. First, though, I would like to share with you how these beautiful words were channeled. Remember, it is sometimes in those loneliest moments of solitude where our soul speaks to us the loudest. Abby told me that she was turning 50 years old. You know how most people celebrate that milestone by sharing it with other people by having huge parties? Well, Abby shared with me that when she turned 50, she was all alone. She said that she was feeling sorry for herself. After she said that, she then giggled. When Abby giggles, her voice is so full of joy and love, and I enjoy so much being able to laugh with her. Her giggle just raises whatever vibration we are in into the next level immediately. Anyway, after she giggled, she told me that she sat down and she poured herself a glass of wine and just started reflecting. When she relaxed and just let go, the following words were the result of her reflection. Do you let moments of life evaporate meaninglessly? Are you confident that you are a divine being on this planet? Do you realize that awakening each day to the thoughts of encountering pleasantness, joy, love, and abundance will bring those moments to you? Are you kind and gentle to yourself? What do you fuel your body with? And do you take your physical body for granted? Are you love from inside out? By Abby Moneyhun. Then she shared with me these 10 powerful things that she channeled. 10 powerful things I wish I would have known when I was 20. Number 1, do not let moments of life evaporate meaninglessly. Life is too short for that. Number 2, wake up in the morning to the knowing you are a divine being on planet Earth. That is a miracle in itself. Give gratitude to the fact that you are here. Number 3, know that if you awake each day to the thoughts of encountering pleasantness, joy, love, and abundance, you will actually encounter ample amounts of each. Number 4, be kind and gentle to yourself. That means when you are looking at yourself in the mirror too. Number 5, when things don't go the way you expected, stop and take a breath. Chill a minute. Don't let your body be eaten by the stress. It all has a way of working out in the end anyway. Number 6, fuel your body with healthy foods and take care of your physical body. Never take it for granted. Appreciate its ability to carry you around on this planet. It's a precious carriage and should be treated as such. Number 7, you never have to convince anyone but yourself of who you are. Others will see you as you see yourself. So work on your own viewpoint of you. Number 8, love fully from the inside out. Be love. You will know when you are because your essence will shine through. You will be an energetic, radiant light on this planet. And believe me, we need more lighthouses, flashlights, and lanterns in this world where things sometimes feel dark. Number 9, when you feel lost, know you only have to ask for the path to be shown. Just ask yourself aloud or write your questions down and know with every fiber of your being you will be given the answer. Keep stepping, even if they are baby steps at times. The path will always show itself. And number 10, life is going to give you so much more than you expected, and you will learn from every single encounter. It's all perfect as it is. Somehow, some way, it's perfect, even when you can't see it at the time. That being said, I can't think of a better way to leave the story of wake up to the alchemy of your heart. But as I said before, this is not the ending, but a new beginning. Until my next writing, I love each and every one of you from the very core of my existence. I am here to assist you in the healing of yourself. I can't heal you, but I can assist you, and I will walk through the fire with you. Deb. the beginning. And now I have finished reading to you Wake Up to the Alchemy of Your Heart. How to activate the sleeping God within you. If you would like a copy of this book, you can get it one of two ways right now. You can either order it on Amazon.com, or you can order a copy through me. I still have some copies left. And I asked for $11.11 for the book itself. And then if I mail it or deliver it, if I just ask for the postage. I hope it is my intention, as I read earlier in the book, that my intention on sharing this with you and being truthful with you and honest of my journey through this life, that it in a way may help each and every one of you to understand the experiences that you have gone through and are going through. I'm reading another book presently, and it's by Dr. George Lambsa. And Dr. George Lambsa, he made it his life's mission, along with Dr. Rocco Enrico, to translate the Bible from Aramaic, which it was originally written in the Bible lands, because Aramaic came before Arabic, to translate the Bible from Aramaic into English. And this book that I'm reading, it talks about the idiosyncrasies of the language that we speak. And one of the idiosyncrasies means, he explains it in the beginning of the book, and I'll be getting into more of that with Wake Up with Dad on future, but just to scratch a little bit of the surface. An idiosyncrasy is like Dr. George Lambsa talks about when he was in the East, and he was reading in the West that there were 150 employees or some amount of employees that were fired or being fired in the West. And he looked it up in his book, in his dictionary, his English dictionary, and fired meant to be set ablaze or to be shot. And he said it was horrific when he read that. And it's an idiosyncrasy that we use in this country every day. You're fired, or you will be fired. And we don't think about the impact of those words, because they're idiosyncrasies. It's like words that we use every day, being born with a silver spoon in your mouth, So if we take the Bible, like a lot of the translators did, and we take word from word to translate it, instead of looking at the way the language was being used in that day, we really become very lost in the misinterpretation. In the Bible, it speaks, I believe it's Deuteronomy, I think it's 8, verse 28. I will correct that if I am misquoting it. But it talks about how the Bible needs to be in plain and clear language. In other words, I like to look at it as the Bible is not written in legalese for only those scholars to understand it. The Bible was written in plain language so that those in the Middle East in plain language would understand it. And one of those idiocisms that was used was let there be light. And I talk about let there be light in my book. And this idiocism that was used in the East, when the words are let there be light, it means let there be enlightenment or understanding. When I read that, it made so much sense to me. It also said that darkness in the Eastern means ignorance. So if enlightenment is understanding and darkness is ignorance, it gives us a whole new perspective on things. Anyway, for me it does. If enlightenment is simply means understanding, then we can reach enlightenment quite easily. Think about it. If we can understand why these things happen to us, and in my book in chapter 3, I talk about, and I'm seeing a psychiatrist now just to figure out understanding on some things, because yes, I do reach out for help. And I was led to this beautiful soul, a really beautiful soul, when my discharge was changed from general discharge due to serious misconduct, which means that I wasn't even looked at really as being honorably served my country for the 4 years that I served. And even just seeing a uniform, someone in a military uniform, used to be a trigger for me as to everything, because I read to you basically what happened during that time of my military life while I was in the Navy. And when I wrote Wake Up to the Alchemy of Your Heart, I was still in a process of understanding, and I'm still in a process of understanding today of being able to forgive, truly forgive the man that raped me, right? But I still was looking at the command, the United States Navy command at Nafak Keflavik, with so much anger that it welled up inside me so much that I couldn't even look at the military as being honorable, as what they're doing as being honorable. As a matter of fact, on Veterans Day, I hated Veterans Day. I really did. And I would see posts on Facebook, if you're a veteran, give a shout out, put a picture of yourself in military uniform or whatever. And I couldn't even be called a veteran because I felt so shameful, so dirty, so guilty, so low that to even look at myself as a veteran, I couldn't see myself in the mirror as a veteran. I could see myself and love myself, but being in that military uniform, I couldn't even look at myself in that military uniform. And writing the chapter of my XO as being a cold woman of power, I realized that I still have a reaction to that. A cold woman of power. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 2009, I put in to get disability from the military for other health issues that I was experiencing that were related, service related. And I received a letter back that stated that number one, I would not be considered for disability because of my discharge. Number two, if I wanted to change that discharge, I could come to Washington, D.C. and fight for that discharge to be upgraded. But in that process, there is no guarantee. And it stated that very little discharge are upgraded doing that, and that there is no guarantee of my discharge being upgraded. And I have to pay for all of the costs related in doing that. And I was so knocked down by all that at that point in time, I slammed the door. I slammed the door. I didn't want to be seen as a veteran. I didn't want anybody to really know about my service. I didn't have any uniforms because they were back in Florida when I was divorced, and I'm sure that my ex-husband got rid of them. I did have my service dress blues. But at that point in time, I got rid of them. At that point in time, I shredded all of my records that I had. At that point in time, I didn't even want, like I said, I didn't want to be associated that I was ever in the military, because that was an even bigger blow than, well, the things that I read to you. So I put that behind me completely, except for I still had a reaction to it when I saw movies with military uniforms. I still had a reaction to it when, anything about military, whether it was Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, Navy, Army. And then one day, it was February 14th of this year, the night before, I had a discussion with my beautiful wife, and I said, I deserve an honorable discharge, and I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to fight for that honorable discharge. And of course, my wife, I told you how supportive she was in the book that I read to you. It was pretty awesome. She backed me up and said, if that's what you think you need to do, I support you. So February 14th, Valentine's Day of this year, I went to the VA, and some of you have already heard this story. But I went to the VA, didn't have an appointment, went in the morning. I think it was around 9:30, if I remember right. I sat in my car. I got my discharge paper that said that I was discharged due to serious misconduct, RE4 discharge code. And before I got out of my car, I prayed. I prayed. And in my prayer, I could actually, I said, I can actually see, I can see this discharge changing. And I am so thankful. I'm so in gratitude. Thank you. Thank you so much, God. I already see it. Avun-Dashmi Anith Kadesh Shmach. Our beloved who is everywhere. And when I went into the VA, there was nobody waiting. And I got called back about 10 or 15 minutes. And the beautiful soul that helped me, I was explaining everything about why I got the discharge and had the paper to prove it and everything else. And this dear, beautiful soul at the VA was listening to my story. And finally I paused and she said, can I show you something? And she turned a computer screen to me. And it said that I was honorably discharged. Now, mind you, I had not done anything in the past except for turn in that paperwork way back when. And it said I had an honorable discharge. So, because I had an honorable discharge, I could go to the VA and I could basically get free mental help. And this woman that I was led to help me, she's fantastic. And I have a lot of aha moments with her. And that's the kind of help that I was looking for. Because enlightenment is understanding. And aha moments are the understanding, the moment of understanding. And in that moment of understanding, and everything is made clear, enlightenment. That's the moment that we can stop and we can take a step back from all the anger, all the sadness, and say, wow. And then we can go into a state of love, compassion, and forgiveness. If we are willing to take the steps to make that understanding, that enlightenment, to step out of that darkness, step out of the ignorance, and step into the light. Let there be light. And I understand now why I wrote that book, Wake Up to the Alchemy of Your Heart. Because waking up to the alchemy of your heart is understanding. and changing your life. From that moment forward, it changes your life. From moving and being in that state of sadness or grief or anger or fear or revenge. And it moves you from that space, if you allow it to love, to joy, to peace. With enlightenment brings peace. With understanding brings peace. And if we, as human beings, mankind, which remember, Jesus called himself the Son of Man, which is another idiocism in the East, which Son of Man means human being or mankind. Jesus did not come in a piousness of, I am the only Son of God. As a matter of fact, I have a hard time finding any scripture, any passage, anywhere where Jesus said, I am the only Son of God and you aren't. Jesus, Yeshua, came to us in a humbleness. When he performed miracles, which he says, these things that I do and ye shall do greater. He said, be the light of the world, the light which is enlightenment. Be the understanding of the world. That's when we have the power to look at the darkness, the ignorance, the light, the enlightenment, and have compassion. That's when we can truly love our enemies, or those who we call our enemies, and pray for those that persecute us. Bless those that persecute us. These are such awesome times that we are in, because we, in our enlightenment, can do that. And in understanding, we can see that the most evilest person living backwards, remember, evil, like I said in my book, is live backwards. We can have an understanding of why they chose that pathway that they chose. I mean, think about it. If your life was threatened, or your entire family's life was threatened, would you do something against your moral consciousness? Some of us would say yes to save our family's lives. And some of us would say no, because we know that letting go of that moral consciousness is worse than any death. But if you were faced with that, we do know that some of the evil people have been bought off, you know. I mean, there was a video on YouTube the other day about how, and the question was put out there, how can Congress and Senate, and I'm not dissing Republican and I'm not dissing Democrat, because this is both sides, how each of them can have stock in the businesses that they make laws for or against. It's quite an interesting question. And I asked that question a long time ago. And now we have this hydroxychloroquine at $1 a pill, compared to this remdesivir that, it's my understanding, it's like $1,280 a pill. I don't have an understanding on, except for when you have a lot of money. Now, this is not for everyone out there that has money, but this is for some of you out there that have money. When you have a lot of money, all you want is more money. That's just like power. When you have a lot of power, the only thing to do is to get more power and be more powerful and be more powerful. Seems like when a corporation is being called a person, and the corporation person's interest is make money at all costs. I mean, it kind of leads you to seeing everything that's been happening. Why are there so many lives through disease, through poison in our food, poison in our air, poison in everything? Just something to think about. But when all this comes out, and it is coming out, the ignorance is surfacing up that has been the darkness for so long. The ignorance of not wanting enlightenment, not wanting to have moral stature, to make moral decisions, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. And I was listening to Cryon yesterday, and it was really cool because Cryon said, when you pray to the God inside of you. Connect to the God inside of you. My God. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. Thy God inside of you. And there's no blasphemy, because thy God inside of you is connected to Awun Dwashmea Nithkadesh Shmach, who is God, who is everywhere, our beloved who is everywhere. Everywhere doesn't mean outside of you. Everywhere means inside of us as well. And that's when we really step into our power. Cryon said that if you have pain in your body, say you have pain in your big toe is not in pain. I am experiencing pain in my body, which is where my toe is. Do something. My God. We no longer have to be under the rules of the healing. Kind of interesting. It really hit me. yesterday when I was listening to him. And I posted on Facebook too. We no longer have to be under those rules of healing. Our bodies can heal whatever way that our God inside of us declares, rules. So we don't have to go pharmaceutical and take these pharmaceuticals to heal ourselves. We don't have to go through these surgeries anymore. Once we really know, we have to have an absolute knowing. And maybe in having that knowing that goes into the field and other people pick it up and having no wing. Maybe all along it's for us to depend on ourselves. Maybe all along it's for us not to depend on the government. Because when the government is not a government for the people, by the people, and I think it's in the Constitution, says that that government can be replaced for the people, by the people. And yeah, I'm going to talk about our president for a moment. Because if you haven't seen that video that I posted on Facebook, it's only 5 minutes long. I would ask you to watch the video of him talking about the New World Order, talking about the things that John F. Kennedy said in his last speech about an industrial complex, about our rights taken away by this industrial complex. And for me, from what I see in my perspective, that's the platform that our president has taken and is fighting for us for. And we may not see it that way, but what we see in front of us is a movie that's taking place when there's things going on behind the scenes. It's kind of like Wizard of Oz. Remember when Dorothy got to the Wizard of Oz and she found out that there was just somebody else pulling the strings? So I said this to say this. Please, if you love our country, if you love America, pray that the highest and greatest good be done. Pray for our president that the highest and greatest good can be done. Pray for Hillary Clinton that the highest and greatest good can be done. Pray for Joe Biden that the highest and greatest good can be done. Pray for each other that the highest and greatest good can be done. Love one another. Well, that's basically my message for today. I thank you so much for joining me. It got a little longer with chapter 8, 9, and 10, and then the message that I had at the end. I will be uploading this on YouTube at 5 p.m. tonight again.